Good afternoon, everybody. I believe that we're getting to a point, when I was young, we used to study or to be taught about diminishing returns. I don't want to get to a point where the returns have gone beyond anything. Anyway, this afternoon we've already spoken about some of the issues I wanted to address, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. What I really need to do is to talk to you very briefly about becoming competitive within the region, okay? I would like to just make a comment that at Strathmore Business School, we're really excited about being engaged with yourselves. Over the course of the last year, we've run several courses and programs for people like yourselves. Our flagship program, the Owner Manager program, is a key program that I think those of you that have visited our stand should think about. There are others as well, okay? So I think that is a beginning. We intend to continue engaging with you on this end, okay? Now, the question of competing within the region has been addressed by so many people and will continue to be addressed. But what are the key issues? I don't want to go into the statistics because they speak for themselves, whichever way you decide to look, okay? Whether you look to the left or to the right, the statistics are excellent. But what do we need to do to be competitive, to be at a point, okay, where we can stand our ground? And for me, from what we've discussed since morning, from the issues that we're going through, the question to ask is, what does all this mean for the growing local company? There are four quick things that I wanted to address. Number one, understanding and redefining yourselves. I have dealt with this message elsewhere, but I'll look at it again. Feeling your market, understanding your market, knowing your market, strengthening your capabilities and competencies, and of course, being market-centered as well. Those two, understanding the market and being market-centered, I think have got distinct issues that are different. So, how do you redefine your identity? Very, very quickly, there are 3 levels at which you have to redefine your identity. But why do we need to redefine our identities? A lot of us have, up to this point, done very well locally, which is excellent, okay? But I will give you an example. At one time, the United Kingdom had a captive market throughout its colonies. What happened when the colonies opened up to competition? The entire manufacturing sector, for example, in the United Kingdom disappeared, okay? And there's a danger for those of you that are excited to get to a point where you think, we have a captive market, the East African region is opening up so we can go and sell, okay? What happens when the region actually allows in COMESA and all these other regions to come and do exactly what you're doing? You might find that it becomes a major issue. And that is why we really need to begin looking at how we identify and define ourselves. Physically, simply a question of being able to go and open a branch, say in Kampala or Kigali or Bujumbura or wherever, okay? Which is very easy. Anybody can do that. But the point is to make it local, to localize it. And I've used 2 examples here, Vodafone and Diageo, the guys that all have big shares in East African breweries, okay? They've made it local. So those of you that drink will drink a Tusker knowing very well it's a local brew, okay? So to what extent are you going to make your operations physically mirror or reflect what is going on the ground? Philosophically, it's basically a question of having a commitment to this dream. We're talking about East Africa, East Africa, East Africa. But I mean, do we even understand what this dream is about? Are we in a place where we can begin to be comfortable walking in any of the 5 capitals and feeling comfortable that we are on home turf, okay? And again, that is a philosophical thing that you have to change, the way you think or feel. At the emotional level, I've used the question, who's your daddy? And it's not about markets, it's about people. And the question is, do you understand your people? Do you understand the people of the region and what it is that they need? Okay? So you have a lot of homework to do You have a lot of homework to do, okay? So that you do not appear, we've already raised or spoken about some of these issues, so that you do not appear to simply be going over there to sell something. Then people will be looking at you and thinking, okay, here's another Kenyan coming to sell stuff to us, okay? And when a South African comes, then we know in some places the choice is going the other way. Okay, so at what point do we get somebody in some little remote town in Mbeya saying, I'm comfortable buying a product that is made in Kenya rather than a product that is made in Durban, for example? Okay, so these are things that we have to clearly be able to address. I've raised this question of East African nationalism as a new phenomenon, okay? We know we all have these, Kenyan, I'm Kenyan, nationalistic sentiments. And we in strategy say that selling on the basis of nationalism is actually a strategy, okay? Those of you, again, that drink, remember the time when South African breweries came and everybody had to, think twice because everybody decided they would prefer Tusker to something else, okay? And we're saying, are we able to define this East Africanness to the advantage of those things that we're doing, so that our customers perceive us as being part of them, okay? A question of capabilities and competencies in terms of developing what it takes to compete against the best. Now, there's a danger. Most of you are actually looking at this as simply a market. That is a mistake. You have a pool of skills of 120 million people, isn't that so? It's not simply a market. To the extent that if you're wanting to recruit a specialist in something, rather than a small pool of what, 40 million? You now have 120. Do you see that as an opportunity? That should help you to redefine yourselves as East Africans. Somebody spoke earlier about taking a bus load of people to go and manage. Okay, but what we are saying is that shouldn't be a problem if the bus comes back full as well. Then that ceases to be an issue. It is an issue because the bus goes full and comes back empty. But if the bus goes full and comes back full, then people will begin to think, well, what's the issue? What is the deal? Okay, it ceases to be an issue. So, again, how you perceive these opportunities is going to change how we operate. Look at it as a source of resources as well. Okay? We're talking about oil and all this mineral wealth and so on and so forth. It's not simply a market. There's a lot of opportunities in terms of resources that you can tap into and be able to actually grow to the next level. Okay? Market-centeredness, is a question of, again, being able to be driven by this market. Do you know or understand what it is the market is looking for? And again, we can always say that, we have a problem because the needs are so many. We haven't even got to a point where we are addressing half of what we need in the region, internally. But do we even know what the needs are? So again, it's a very, very serious issue of doing our homework, of doing our research and so on, to try and define and identify, okay? If we look, for example, at the fact that oil is a reality in the region, a lot of you are dealing in products and so on and so forth. Do you know that there are needs for this particular industry that we could begin tapping into? But do we even know that? Okay? So everybody's just thinking, it's a market, we'll just make things and go and sell. Okay, it's more than that. Okay. Regional centeredness, we've already said, begin to think regional, okay? Begin to think you are an East African. It makes a lot of sense when you're addressing your needs in terms of growth, and when you're addressing those things that you should be considering or targeting. I've already said that this is a resource pool which includes competencies, capabilities across the region. The other issue, of course, is a question of collaboration, okay, with others. There's so many others that you can bring on board to strengthen what you're doing. What have I said, basically? What I've said is very, very simple. If you do not revisit who you are, okay, you might miss the boat. At some point, the region is going to open up, and I've already said that. It's going to open up to others. So if you are seen, I mean, the other day I was watching TV, and some guy at Namanga was saying, "Nyinyi mnakuja kutuumiza jamani." Now, do you think it's the responsibility of that guy to change their perception? No, it is your responsibility to be able to deal with the perception as well as the reality. Because in that statement, there is both perception and reality. So what is it that you're doing as an organization individually and as a sector, okay, to address some of these issues? Because we have to deal with them, okay? We have to deal with them to be able to compete effectively. Okay? When you find an East African being happier buying from a Chinese rather than a Kenyan, then there's a problem, isn't it? Okay? And so we have to address this. It's also a question of being able to address how well we are servicing our market. Okay? People are going to get to a point where they do not buy from you simply because you're Kenyan, but because you're providing a good product or a good service. Okay? So I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I think I've made my point. Thank you very much, unless, of course, the questions.
Anybody that has a question for Dr. Mulengani? There is a question.
Thank you, Dr. Katwalo. My name is Potasholo, CEO of Ilaf Engineering. You talked about if Kenyans buy from a Chinese rather than a Kenyan, then something is wrong. How do you explain recently there was a mud rush in the show? Everybody went to the Nairobi show. Everybody was scrambling to Chinese places and buying things very cheaply and avoiding the local products. I mean, this is something which we saw last week. Some of this, whatever you say, is actually a perception from our people. It could be economical because everybody go for cheap thing. How do you explain that? Thank you.
I mean, you've already answered part of the question. Part of it is perception. We have to correct the perception, okay? That everything that is local is a big, is no good. We have to deal with that perception. How we do it, I think I'll leave that to yourselves to think about. But it's something that we have to think about. But beyond that is also a question of the reality. The other day I bought a packet of crisps, and it had staples on the sides, okay? Now, I opened it and started to eat. And unknown to me, one of the staple pins was inside. So I actually ended up chewing it. And I swore to myself never to buy local crisps again. Because if I'd swallowed it, I probably would be in hospital or something. That is the reality. Because we're not really seriously addressing questions of quality and so on and so forth. So if I've got to make a choice and I'm looking at two things, the choice is very easy. So we have to deal with the perception, but we also have to deal with the reality. And the reality is our market for so long has not been demanding. So when we suddenly, and I've said to you, when the market opens up, even those of you that are going to the other countries within the region might find it difficult to compete because we've partially addressed these issues, or not at all. Okay? So as you go into the region, think about quality issues. Think about actually meeting the needs of your market. And I think that answers your question. Yes.